Hey everyone, Jeff here, also known as the Revit Kid. Welcome to a new episode of BIM After Dark Live. This is episode 37, believe it or not, which is pretty awesome. Super excited for my guest today, Marcelo. We're going to introduce him in a minute. I'm sure everyone out there already knows Marcelo, but he was on the show once in the past as well, and has been a mention on the blog, my blog at the Revit Kid, many times over the years. So super excited about talking about his new book. And we're going to be talking about Grasshopper and Dynamo and Revit and connecting all these things, and really fun episode for you today. Thank you for joining us live. If it is your first time here, thank you for checking us out. Make sure you subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. Also hit the notification bell. By subscribing and getting notifications, you'll know every time I go live or every time I post a new video. If you're returning, thank you so much for joining us again. You guys are awesome. This is, as I said, the 37th week in a row. This show is a weekly live stream where it's either myself or guests or multiple guests or one guest, and we're talking about Revit, BIM, and all kinds of associated software and technology around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. Before we jump into our introducing my great guest, Marcelo, I did want to mention our sponsor for this episode. Extremely excited to have BIMBox on board, and I'll play a really quick reel and tell you guys a little bit about the awesome deal that you can get by taking advantage of learning about BIMBox through this lovely channel here. So let's roll the reel real quick. So there you have it. BIMBox is our hardware sponsor, our official sponsor of BIM After Dark Live. For those of you that don't know what BIMBox is a computer manufacturer for the AEC industry, and more specifically for Revit users. So whenever you're asked, hey, what computer should I use for Revit, they've actually created a laptop and a desktop that have been designed for Revit. I will tell you from personal experience, I've been using BIMBox, both the desktop and the laptop, for over 9 months now, and they are monsters. I test them out on all my high projects, or my large projects especially. If you are somebody who's using maybe, as I was testing out the other day, 3 gigs worth of models, they run snappy as if it's a 200 megabyte file, which is phenomenal. The other thing that's pretty cool is they're also set up to do VR, real-time rendering, and all of that great stuff. Just last week, I decided to test out a rendering that I did for another project on 3 different laptops. One of them is the Origin laptop, which you guys may have seen my review from about a year ago, and the BIMBox laptop and the BIMBox desktop, which is sitting behind me. And just for a real quick story, it took about 1 hour or actually I think it was 2 hours and 15 minutes on the Origin to render this 3-minute video. It took about an hour and 20 minutes on the BIMBox laptop, and then 57 minutes to render it on the desktop sitting behind me. So if that's what you're into, then I can guarantee you that you're going to get higher rendering speeds. The other thing I wanted to mention too is if you head on over to bimbox.bimafterdark.com, or you email sales@bimboxusa.com, and you let them know that you heard of them, or you know Jeff, or you watched the show. They're having a year-end sale where you're going to get $800 off the Striker 2, which is the desktop designed for Revit, $1,400 off the Osprey, which is designed for laser scanning and producing and dealing with large scan files, and then $150 off laptops and upgrades and stuff like that. So reach out to them. They're amazing. 3-year warranty, awesome sales team, and I promise you will not be disappointed. So thank you, BIMBox. Now, without further ado, Marcelo, are you ready before I bring you in here? I know you're flipping around back there. I want to introduce my guest today, Marcelo Sgambelluri. Sgambelluri, right? Is that right? Is that close enough? Sgambelluri. All right, let me make sure your audio is on. If anyone has any issues with audio and stuff, let me know. We'll make sure that the levels are okay. And the other thing I should mention, actually, as I bring Marcelo on here, is that this is a live show. So if you're watching us here today, right now, live, I want you to chat. I want you to ask questions in the chat and communicate with us so that we have a nice collaborative environment and discussion. Anyways, Marcelo Sgambelluri, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. First of all, I'm pretty excited about this because it's kind of cool that you came on the show, one of the first episodes of the show, when we had a nice little dual conversation with Paul Aubin. Then you came back and you were talking about Rhino inside of Revit. And that episode, actually, I will post in the links for the show later on. And during that, you mentioned that you were in the process of writing this book, which relates to sort of the Rhino inside of Revit and all that good stuff. And then you published the book, and now you're back on the show talking about the book. So before we jump into the actual book, maybe for those of you out there who do not know who Marcelo is, maybe give everyone a little introduction on yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
Of course.
My name is Marcelo. I've been in the industry now. Let's see, December 1st would be 22 years. I can't believe it's been that long. Holy smokes. My formal training is a structural engineer. I'm the current director of advanced technology at John Martin Associates. It's a structural firm. What I like to do in the industry is try to learn new software, push it to its limits, and try to teach everyone how to understand it a little bit better. So I have a blog and a podcast called Simply Complex. What I do is just write in the name. I try to take complex things and make them simple. And then now I've been presenting, well, virtually this year, I suppose, but usually present all over the world, different conferences, Autodesk University, as well as the Build Conference, and then now more recently, I'm an author. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, awesome. So for those of you who are interested and want to know about the book, we're going to talk about it all today. But here it is. Here, I got a nice advanced copy. Thanks for sending this out. My first question before we even jump into the book is: did you know that you were going to be releasing it near Christmas, and that's why you went with the red and green inside, or was that just a happy accident?
That's just a pure coincidence, actually. And we'll get into it, but the book has Dynamo and Grasshopper, and their flagship colors are green and red. I suppose. I guess I assigned red to Dynamo.
I was gonna say, I'm not. Does Dynamo have a flagship color? I don't know.
I suppose it doesn't. To me, it does.
To you, it's red.
Yeah, because the examples I would do anytime I was at a conference teaching Dynamo, the examples were done in a red theme, and so when I decided to add Grasshopper to the book, then it made sense to Dynamo was red, and then when I decided to add Grasshopper to the book, it made sense just to make it green, and so now we have these red-green colors. And no, it's just a coincidence that both are red and green, and that it actually is coming out before Christmas time.
Yeah, and actually, yeah. I think most of your, if I'm not mistaken. Some of these one pagers from Dynamo, a lot of these were driven from your blog, and you always had these one. I think they were always a red hue, anyways, right? And so for those of you that don't know, for I don't even know how many years now you've been publishing these little, basically the one page is the right side, I guess, of the book of a lot of these examples on your blog, and you would take a Dynamo script and basically try and hone it down to a one pager to explain the process, and so. I think I posted plenty of those on my blog over the years, reposted them, and so thank you for those. But I was going to say, I think those were always red, so you kind of stuck with it.
Right, and I'm not quite sure why I chose red initially. I think the evolution of the cheat sheet, that one-page format was I was doing handouts for the conferences, and they were kind of wordy and lengthy, and I realized I could when I would read over them, I would just look at the picture, and so I figured I might as well just put everything in the picture, and so I would start highlighting things in red, which kind of stood out. And then I just ended up making the examples just a one-page picture. And then that kind of evolved over the years since actually it was since 2014 is when it started to just start. I was looking at some of my old examples, and gosh, they were really ugly. But over the years, I started making them more consistent. And then I finally landed on the template that you see now on the right. I think probably some of the listeners, you held up the book, right? Some of the listeners might not have seen the book, but maybe I have my own copy.
I hope you do. I hope you do.
Yeah. So can you see that on the?
Yep.
It'd be the right side, which is the odd page number side. It's got it's got the template that I use now, and then so when I did the Grasshopper side, it decided to make it kind of a green mirror image.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't seen the book or any options of it or any pages from it, basically it's 270 something pages of essentially the one page cheat sheets of one side is Grasshopper and one side is Dynamo, and they're basically the exact same examples, and both of them running on top of Revit. And so pretty awesome. I've had the book now for a week and a half or so, and some really cool examples. I would say my favorite part of that format is like many out there, I'm sure. I dislike reading unless especially when it's or nonfiction reference material. I'm just not that type of person. And so to me, the cheat sheet is just, and I think if you're watching this, you're probably somewhat technologically inclined, I would think, in general. That's just the nature of the demographic for Revit users. And so I think that one page is all you need to figure it out, right? And that's all we're ever looking for, is sort of that get us over the edge, and we'll take it from there. And that's what I like about it. So bravo on that. Thank you so much for that. And I think before we jump into any examples and sort of talk a little bit about the book, maybe let's talk about why you decided that doing 200 pages of a Dynamo cheat sheet needed to be complemented with doing 200 pages of a Grasshopper cheat sheet. Let's start there.
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Actually, the book. Okay, so we talked about kind of the start of the evolution of the cheat sheet, and then the only media which I was getting it out, that message, was through my blog site and my conferences. And I thought, the next evolution of this is to make some kind of publication. And so I started to think about that, but I struggled with how to do it. And if there's a need for it, that sort of thing. But this kind of went on for 3-4 years as I just kind of made things more consistent. By January, I had actually a full flushed out Dynamo book. It wasn't quite referenced like it is now. We can talk about the contents and the index, but it was 90% there. Then the Rhino Inside Revit technology, it actually hit the scene last November. November 2019, and I was already starting to do examples of it. And so one way I was teaching myself how to do the examples was I was actually taking some of the Dynamo equivalent and making them in Grasshopper. I had like 3 or 4, and so I thought, well, what if I make it a companion book? So you could actually, the idea was, on this side you would have a Dynamo book and you would read it this way. You'd flip it upside down, you'd have Grasshopper. You'd read it that way, and I'd have a bunch of Grasshopper examples. But I realized as I started making more and more Grasshopper examples, they were very similar to the Dynamo examples I had. So then I thought, what if I just make them equivalent? One page Dynamo, one page Grasshopper. And so that's what I did. That's what took me all of 2020, quite honestly, to do that. And the reason I did it was because I wanted the industry to be familiar with Grasshopper if they were not familiar with Grasshopper, because it's going to be a big part of the AEC industry technology moving forward, especially now that the Rhino Inside Revit technology is out there and available, and Grasshopper can now talk with Revit. So I thought to have the equivalence, and then that way you could, if you know Dynamo, you can learn Grasshopper. If you know Grasshopper, you can learn Dynamo. Or if you don't know either, you have the ability to read one page or the other, or both. It would just give everybody options. And another thing I was thinking about was, I wanted to try to teach the book so people could be just bilingual in the languages. And the best way to do that is to have it equivalent on each side. It was quite the challenge. I just thought it would be easy to just kind of do the equivalents, but Grasshopper is a different animal. It is a visual programming language, but it's got its own culture and way of thinking, I suppose.
Yeah. And that was kind of my next question, was going to be how similar did you actually find it? Because it is, I don't know Grasshopper, and I'll be the first to admit that. And I do know Dynamo though, and I was able to look at some of these and look at Grasshopper, without even trying it on the computer. I can sort of begin to understand the logic and how the comparisons are there. But I have to imagine that there was limitations on both sides that made it very difficult in some areas to to create a synonymous relationship between both cheat sheets, right?
It certainly was. I have to say I did not end up changing any of my dynamo examples to match the limits, or to match um, what
Grasshopper.
I was able to work out every single one. If
Mm,
anything, I actually added. What I did was because I actually added to the dynamo section um, with the philosophy that Grasshopper has, and we can get into that a little bit later with the interoperability section. Uh,
okay.
yeah, but
So you found some expansions with Grasshopper. You had some ideas of how it can be utilized, and then you ended up writing Grasshopper scripts, and then said, "Oh, I should try and do these in Dynamo now." So
exactly.
it kind of you kind of floated to both sides. That's pretty
I
cool. That's
did.
neat.
I
Yeah.
did. The last chapter of the book is called interoperability.
Hmm.
The last 10 examples, those are the latest ones to be created, are the Dynamo ones. Um, and so because the idea was how in interoperability section in Rhinoceros, it's a
Hmm.
little more obvious. It's like, how do I get my Rhinoceros geometry into Revit? And
Hmm.
then that chapter explains how to do that. But
Hmm.
then I thought, I'm not doing that on the grass on the Dynamo side. What if you have Dynamo geometry and you want to get into Revit? What if you use Dynamo as your modeling environment? And so I actually built a whole section on that, and I was actually quite enlightened. I was like, I learned a few things, and I thought, I'm going to start building more things in Dynamo
And then bringing
because
them in, and
I've
now
learned
is
that.
because of the logic setup or the philosophy of Grasshopper and Revit, right? So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, and the yeah, I suppose, yes, and the need for interoperability, and me finally wrapping my head around some good practical use cases for it. So yeah, it was very exciting. I had a great time. The folks at McNeil, the ones who make Rhinoceros and Grasshopper, were very helpful when I had questions or issues, things like that, as well as Autodesk. They were helpful with my efforts. So yeah,
Awesome.
it was quite the journey. But that's that's why I did it.
Hmm.
Was to give everybody a lot of options, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then Jeff, I always say, why not do it? I mean, you don't necessarily need an excuse.
I was expecting that to be your first answer, but I'm glad you went with an extended piece first because this is a show.
Yeah.
But I agree, right? The why not? I will say, and when it comes to even Dynamo, but definitely Grasshopper is the practical examples to me are always the ones that get people beyond sort of the why nots, like you're saying, in the door, right? Because there are some people who don't have that philosophy of, yeah, why not spend a year putting together learning this thing, right? If they don't have a practical, useful, real world example. So I think that interoperability stuff, and then I think we're going to show just one example from the book before jumping into all kinds of cool stuff that I think helps, because to me, with any of these things, finding a practical problem to solve always helps you get your foot in the door, and then from there, depending on your personality, you may go down the rabbit hole and end up writing a 300-page book about it, right?
Right. That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's
Very
right.
cool.
That's right. I have to say, when I was writing the book, it's funny, but it's like making a PowerPoint presentation, especially because the book I have is basically just a book of pictures. So
Mm-hmm.
so you end up tweaking things above and beyond just the content that's in each page, right? Like the colors, the graphics, and so
Mm-hmm.
I spent many hours, months of research, like trying, quite honestly, hundreds of schemes on how the template should look, because there's
Mm-hmm.
little frills around there with the whatnot and
Mm-hmm.
the tabs and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
I spent a long time doing that, and I finally settled into something that I was okay with. But like a PowerPoint presentation, you feel like it's never it's
It's
it's never over, right? You're just like,
right,
you can
right, right.
always do
Eventually, you
something.
just have to present it, though. Eventually, you just
Yeah,
have to
there you
do it,
go.
right?
And
Time
Jeff,
runs out.
so what I did in October is I said I'm putting a date down on December 15th,
Hmm.
and so yeah, that's
So here we are.
here we, here we
Awesome.
are. Here we are.
Awesome.
It's a bit it's something new for me, so I'm a
Yeah.
bit nervous, kind of like I would be on the stage.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Of
yeah.
course. Awesome. Well, no, this is great. So I think what we'll do is let's jump into something that you're probably more comfortable with, which is what we always do, which is live demo and having some fun with the program. I think what we'll do first is maybe I'll show the Dynamo side of this example, and then we can jump over and you can have a blast showing all the other stuff and going the Marcelo way out with it. How about that?
Okay. Okay. I'll see what I. Okay. We'll give it a try. You go ahead, and then if you got it, we have any comments or anything.
Yeah. So a couple people already asked how can they get the book, and so we could talk about that now or later or at any moment in time. No matter what, I'm going to have links in the description here in the video as well as on the blog. But if we wanted to tell people right now and they wanted to run out and get it, can they get it today, and where is the best place for them to get it?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Very good. You want me to answer that?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay. So, yes.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, and then I will. Yes. Okay. And then there'll be, and we can mention.
We're definitely going to put links and everything. Yeah. So anyone seeing this afterwards, they'll see it on my blog. They'll see it in the description here on YouTube and all that good stuff. But if someone wants to run right now and grab it.
If you wanted to run right now, you can find the link to get it on aeccheatsheets.com. There's a link there on the reference manual. You'll find it pretty easily. That'll ultimately take you to a few sites. There's an ebook out right now, as well as a paperback version that could be ordered right now. If you're in the U.S., you can still get it before Christmas.
Awesome. And I just posted that link in the chat too, so if you guys want to click it in there and go, but it'll also be in all of the normal places where I put my links. So awesome. So that's aeccheatsheets.com, and then on the top right there's a little sorry about that.
Okay, and then go ahead and check that out. There's also a hardback version coming out in January, but that actually you can pre-order right now as well.
Awesome.
That comes out first week of January.
Somebody just asked is there an elephant page? And
there's not an elephant page. There is though. What I did because the last chapter and the last part of my was the Dynamo. At the end, actually, Jeff, if you look at
yep. I was just rolling to it myself, right? There's a
261.
Yep.
An interoperability page on the.
There you go.
So. Cow. And then the equivalent, I didn't do a cow for the equivalent of a rhinoceros. I did a rhinoceros.
And anyone who doesn't know the reference, it goes back many years. And Marcelo's sort of claim to fame way back then was he was the elephant guy because he modeled this awesome elephant using conceptual massing and Revit. Essentially, it was basically when it first started, it came out in conceptual massing, right? Somewhere around the time when it first started coming out.
Yes.
So
yes,
that is why the elephant, the rhino, the cow, they're all relevant here. Go ahead.
I thought I'd mention that this book is available in other countries. Maybe I'll list them out at the end of the show.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm assuming going there and clicking where to buy and stuff will give you that. But we can talk about where it's available, and I guess the ebook version can be available anywhere as well, right? I mean, no, maybe. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. All right, cool. So what I wanted to do was, we were talking about, how can we demonstrate examples? I mean, there's 272 or whatever examples in this book, so there's a lot to dig through. And to me, it's always, like I said, finding practical examples. And so you came up with the idea actually of, hey, is there something in here that you used or you have used or that that you can show the Dynamo side, and then I'll show the Grasshopper side, and then we can dig into that more. And so that's kind of what we're going to do here. Is there's an example from the book that I actually used from you. You had it on your blog. God, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even more. That happens to be in the book as well, and so I'll run through that example a little bit, and I think it's practical. I actually used it in a real world application, so I think it's awesome. And so I'm going to show the Dynamo side of it, and then you'll jump into some of the Grasshopper side of it. And what I'd like to do too is sort of talk about maybe differences, benefits, pros, cons, like things that you've learned by doing this translation. So unfortunately, Marcelo, you're not going to see my screen live because
Sure, I'll just use my
so
imagination.
you're going to use your imagination,
Well, I still
or if
mine
you have
on
YouTube
top.
open,
So
16 seconds from now you'll see it. But really, I'll talk through it, and I think you'll be able to see exactly what I'm doing. How about that? everyone
sure.
out there, everyone out there will be able to see it though. It's just
Okay.
the limitations of doing a Zoom call on top of streaming on top of all of this is just it was a little complicated there. So
Sure.
I'll jump over and share my screen with everybody and sort of run through what this example is. So right now I'm showing Revit, and this is actually a Unitarian church that we're working on in Connecticut here. And as I spin around it, you guys will see it's got a pretty funky roof shape. It's actually pretty neat. This is a really cool looking building. It's wood framed, built in the 70s, I believe. And it looks really, really cool. But, I was tasked with modeling it. So, modeling the roof was one thing, which took just a lot of flexing and pushing and pulling a masked surface essentially, until it got to the point where it was right, and then I just did a roof by face. And of course it's mirrored, which is very nice. But then came this whole, if I hide this roof for you guys, I had to show these huge timber beams that were underneath it. And it seems pretty simple, but then you start looking at it, and the curve at every single piece under this roof is different, right? And so placing a beam along this is pretty challenging. So I could have taken a couple different options. I could have made maybe an adaptive component and clicked and try to make it deflects to it. But I remembered a blog post that Marcelo posted, which happens to be the cheat sheet from page let's see, page 203 of his book, and that's how I did it. So what I'm going to do real quickly is just show you how this works. So now I'm off to the side, and this is just the roof shapes and the model lines. So essentially you have a roof shape here and a roof shape here, and then I've got these model lines underneath it. And these model lines are representing the beams. So if you were to just look straight down on this thing in plan view, right, those would be your beams. So you're just showing the path of these beams. And so what Dynamo's doing when I run this script, which I'll open right now, is it's going to take those lines, project them using what's called project input onto. So it's taking those lines, projecting them onto that surface, and then from there you're going to actually get points and geometry, curves, I guess you could call them, so curves, and it's going to place a structural beam along those points. So essentially I could make these shapes pretty much whatever I wanted. Right now I'm just drawing a line. It's going to take them, project them onto the surface, and then place a beam there. So all you have to do is select model elements. So here I'm going to select my model lines. So I'm just going to go in real quickly, select the model lines, and then I'm going to make sure I select my face. So select my face. And I want to make sure you guys can see both things running here. If I look really quickly at the Dynamo script, it's pretty straightforward. You select your elements. Here, it's actually projecting those elements onto the surface. And then here, there's a Dynamo out-of-the-box node, I believe, that's called structural framing beam by curve. So a curve is essentially a line in Dynamo, for lack of a better term, and it's going to place them along that. So if I click run, Dynamo's going to chug for a second. As you can see, I actually picked a W12 by. I probably should have picked the wood beam on this one, but that's okay. So you can pick the beam type. And now Dynamo's running, and it's projecting, and then it's going to place the beams on that surface. So here we go. And now if I hide my roof for now, you'll see I have beams, and they're actual Revit beams, and they're following that surface. So super cool, and honestly super practical, because you may run into roofs, crazy designs, and so on in your lifetime, and I'm sure we all do. And so that's the example. So with that, what I'll do is quickly jump back over so that we're seeing everybody again. All right, I know you couldn't see that, Marcelo, but I think you imagined what was going on, right?
Good.
So that's the example in Dynamo. So I thought that was a cool example because it's practical to the point where you could actually use it right now on a project if you had maybe I think the example you give is like a crazy canopy, probably because I guess the most practical use of a roof shape like that, as far as just dealing with the space underneath it, is probably a canopy. But also I guess, yeah. I mean, to me, I guess, yeah, the wavy canopy is something that's probably more useful. And yeah, but it's also, to me, I've used that technique now on a couple other things. That the project onto technique is super powerful. If you have a surface, a wavy curve, anything, taking just a straight line, projecting it onto it, and then using that to draw things is extremely powerful. So with that, I'll let Marcelo take over and sort of maybe talk about how this looks in Rhino slash Grasshopper slash
Sure.
Revit and that whole good thing.
Okay. Good timing. As as
Perfect
Jeff was
timing. Do you want me
talking
to
about,
delay it? I'll go back and delay it a little longer.
no, as Jeff was talking there, I was building this in the background, so my heart's pounding, and I'm like, oh,
It
okay,
looks like it. It looks like it.
all right, very good. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see. It looks like I see Rhino, and I see one side of the roof of the church I just showed everybody.
Right. Okay, that's correct. So,
Mhm.
okay. So the idea here is I'm going to show that same example, but in Grasshopper, and how you may reimagine using Grasshopper to do this example. So when Jeff built the roof surface in the massing environment in Revit.
Mhm.
Now, if, for example, you have another situation where you model the roof surface in Rhinoceros because either you're more comfortable modeling it or someone gives it to you. This is that particular surface.
Which I should jump in actually. That is probably a more practical use of this than anything too, because I would say 90% of the time my experience with Rhino is usually someone modeling it and giving it to me and then saying and then me having to do something with it. Right? That's usually most of the experience. And then you're like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? Right? And so this is a perfect example, I think, of that interoperability mixed with sort of geometry and practicality.
Okay, right. So it brings up another good example of why if you know how to do it in Dynamo, would you need to learn to do it in Grasshopper? Well, what if, like Jeff said, you don't get that surface in Revit and you get it in Rhinoceros? Then what do? Okay, well, the Dynamo solution is not going to be as efficient for you as using the Grasshopper solution. So okay, so let's just get into it. All right, real quick.
Do it.
So
Yep.
here's the surface. Okay, so what you want to do is you would want to get this eventually into reference into Revit, and so we're going to use the new Rhino inside Revit technology. Now I set kind of all this up, but quickly is inside of Revit. Where's my Revit? Hang on a second. I've got a lot of windows here, Jeff.
Multiple monitors, right?
Yeah, multiple monitors. Here we go. Here we go. I do have multiple monitors. Okay. So oh gosh, I just had it. Okay. Whew. Here we go. Okay. Inside of Revit, if you have Rhinoceros 7 now, which is been out a few weeks, you can also get the Rhino inside Revit plugin, and then it would show up right here on your tab. Okay. So what you would need to do, then you would get all this menu for the Rhino inside Revit tools that I'm going to show you how to use it. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is, let's say, for example, we have the model lines inside of Revit, but we have the surface inside of Rhinoceros. Maybe these match grid lines or something, so it makes sense to do them inside of Revit. I don't know, for whatever reason, whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is all of your computation is going to be done inside of Grasshopper. Grasshopper is going to be the conduit at which to get from Rhinoceros into Revit. Okay, so we need to get it all into Grasshopper geometry. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Grasshopper. I already have the pre-built script here. Okay, so basically this one right here, this node right here, Brett, we're going to select it out of Rhinoceros, and then here, and then it's going to convert it from Rhinoceros geometry to Grasshopper geometry. The good thing is that Grasshopper geometry could also be previewed in Revit. So now you see Grasshopper geometry previewed in Revit, and it's looking pretty good, right? It's also good because you can see there that it's all lined up and coordinate and whatnot. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to turn these lines into Grasshopper geometry. So we can pre-select them, and then we can go back to Grasshopper here. I've got a lot of windows, so here we go. Okay, and then this particular node right here, select graphical element. That's going to be selecting elements out of Revit. So then I'm going to say select multiple elements, and now it sets it to Grasshopper geometry. So when I go back to Revit, you would see that they're selected. But anyway, okay. So now that we've did the selecting part, now we can move on. So if we go back to Grasshopper, then what we do is, I won't go through all of it, but basically then we need to extract the lines out, and that's this one, element geometry. If in Grasshopper, you'll see now that there's a tab called Revit, and in there it's got hundreds of nodes. One of them under element is element geometry. So basically we'll take Grasshopper geometry and kind of Revit geometry and interpret it to Grasshopper geometry so it could be used. So basically I'm going to use this, and then I'm going to use the project, which is just meat and potatoes Grasshopper. They have a project node just like Dynamo. And then I'm going to feed in a BREP. A BREP is basically it's basically a generic surface or a generic solid is what it is. It's kind of a Grasshopper language. So the projection says, give me a BREP, which is that surface I selected, and give me the curves which we're extracting out of Revit. So I'll feed that in, that gives it the curves, and that gives it the BREP. And then I'm taking the curve, and I'm because of the way the curve is defined, it's using a NURBS formulation. So we basically just need to kind of rebuild it so that Revit can interpret it a little easier. And that's what these few nodes are. It's all spelled out in the book. And then over here is the pretty one, which is the add beam node, which is just like what Jeff showed, which is structural framing beam by curve. This is the same thing. It defaults a type in a level, so I won't mess with that. But there they are. And then we can see inside of, it also previews it in Rhinoceros. And then boom, there they are inside of Revit.
And those are Revit beams, right?
They are. I'm going to click and I'm going to look here. Oh, and we actually have a timber.
There you go.
So pick that one up. Yeah, so these are actually Revit beams. Now, all this geometry is being controlled by Grasshopper. And this surface is being controlled inside of Rhinoceros. So if that surface in Rhinoceros were to change or shift, then these beams would automatically update. Yeah, cool.
So,
okay.
So real quickly though, before we jump on, and remember guys, this is live, so feel free to ask questions. I noticed that beam was pinned, which is pretty neat. So in my example, when we do beam by curve, right, it's placed and it has all the points. You can see all the thousands of points depending on how complex it is. But the pin piece is kind of interesting. So is that, you're saying that's pinning to the Rhino geometry, and if you want to, you can unpin it? I actually never tried this. This is awesome.
Yeah, very good question. Okay, if geometry is being controlled by Grasshopper, it will pin the element so that you cannot move it out of place, because it's another recognition to say this is being controlled by something else. Now, you could unpin it, but if you unpin it, then you're severing the link between Revit and the Grasshopper control, which might be okay because maybe you only ever use the Grasshopper script once. You're done. Production does this, and now they come here and maybe they unpin it and maybe they change it to a different type. Maybe it's a steel beam now, or something along those lines.
Yep.
So that's one thing. Now another thing is you could change the type using Grasshopper if you wanted to. That's a separate page in the book.
That's awesome. No, that's great. That's really cool. And so I assume, so now this geometry or this beam is now a Revit element. So it has its own. It's literally living inside of Revit, but it's being controlled by Grasshopper until you unpin it, at least, right?
That is correct. And the good thing here is that if you've got a good grasp of Dynamo and Revit relationship, you will then relatively easily pick up the relationship between Grasshopper and Rhinoceros and Grasshopper and Revit, because you're already kind of in that mindset of thinking about how those relationships work and how each has its own unique geometry.
Now, I may be getting into the weeds a little bit, but if you unpin and then repin it, can you do that? Is it all, or once it's unpinned, that's it?
The moment you unpin, you sever the link.
Yeah, that's kind of what I assumed.
Yeah. But these bring up very good questions. Should you pin? Should you unpin? It's all about the workflow in your office, right? I mean, maybe you have individuals who are building surfaces in Rhinoceros, and then you're building the beams in Revit, and so you need to have those conversations, because each project, each workflow is going to be unique, and that's the beauty about the book and this tech, is that it gives you the flexibility to do what you want in your office based on your workflow. So
Yeah,
it's,
and it reminds me kind of for maybe people who aren't super fluent in Dynamo or Grasshopper or these processes. If you at least use the conceptual modeling environment to maybe make a surface, if you have to make a Zaha Hadid type of building, right? And you're using Revit. It's that idea of doing a wall by face or something by face and then deleting the mass, right? That's once you delete the mass, save as, close the project. Guess what? You cannot control that anymore. I think this is a little more flexible, but it's a similar idea. Like think about downstream use of that mass, and will it change? Will you want to be able to modify it, right?
that's right. And Jeff, can I add a few more things since we're
Yeah,
kind of in the now with
let's do it.
this? So you heard me mention that the particular example you showed, page 202 and 203, is on a wavy canopy, how to project the beams. Very similar to this, Jeff. Yeah. And I mentioned that you could physically change the types yourself, or you could change the type programmatically using Dynamo or using Grasshopper.
Right.
So the idea with the book is it's not meant to really teach you content. It's meant to teach you concepts. So the concept of this is to project something onto something and build something. That's the best way to say this, because in my example, I'm actually using grids, and then the grids get turned into curves and then get projected. But so what? What if they're grids? What if they're model lines? What if they're edges of slabs? It doesn't matter. The fact that this is a roof surface, it could be a roof surface, it could be the underside of a ramp, and so on and so on. Do these have to be beams? No, maybe they're piping or something else. Maybe they're the top cords of trusses. The point is that you learn these concepts. So that's one. Two is each example is small so that they have concepts. So if you wanted to change the type, you take the example from that page and then you can plug it in. Now you have page 202 concept to make it. Then you have page X, I don't have it all memorized, to change the type, and then now you can put them together. And then another thing you mentioned is wall by face. There's another example towards the end of the book that shows you how to do wall by face, where you can take that concept and then put it together. Now you have three concepts together to make a more complicated script. That's kind of the idea. And so in the book, I guess we'll talk about it. The front few pages is a table of concepts, not a table of contents.
No, I mean, when I think about my journey learning Dynamo, it's very similar, right? I think I've called it in some blog posts and even in my courses, I call it peripheral Dynamo. It's you learn something like this, or maybe pipes is actually a good example. You learn in Dynamo how to one of the first things I learned was placing a fence using an adaptive component on a topography. And this was before you could host railings to topography. and it was a perfect example where I learned that, and I was like, wait a minute, if I can do this, well, then I can put piping on a topography, and I can just shrink it down 3 feet, and now I have conduit run that's always has 36 inches of cover, right? And so those are the things that over my journey of learning these programs, it makes complete sense that you learn one thing, maybe learn another thing, and then all of a sudden it's like a bell goes off, and you're like, oh, well, I can use this to do that. So with that, I think that's also why I enjoy the cheat sheet setup like you've done here, because that is exactly what it does. It sparks ideas, and then you can run around and do whatever you want with those ideas, right? And that's the goal.
That's right, and that's correct. And really, what I wanted to do with the cheat sheets was not make the software intimidating. If you kind of Google Dynamo and look at the Google images, a lot of it's a lot of boxes and wires, and it's really hard to just kind of say, what is this doing? But my examples in the book, maybe 8 to the most. There's a few 13 nodes, but most 8, 1 to 8 really. You look at it and you don't feel as intimidated, so you'll want to try it, you'll want to absorb it. And what I learned over the years, especially being on stage and presenting, is that if you can get somebody just to try it, then you already are 90% there. And so I just wanted this book to not be intimidating. I just want people to try it. Because if you try it and then I said this, we did a podcast last week, I think, on the book. I said the same thing, is that a really good thing here, Jeff, is we got a lot of very intelligent professionals in our industry, and just they can take it. You get them going, and then they can take it from there. In fact, as I was talking, I was looking at this. Do you see how these beams are actually placed at the center by default? Well, you could go over here and then change them to top, or
Do it
there's
programmatically.
another page on the book that shows you
Hmm.
how to get and set parameters, and
Yep.
you can take that concept, put it here, and change the
Yep.
parameter from center to from origin to top down or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right though. That's you start to see all of those things as it unfolds. So I think I did want to talk about then because I do think
Okay.
it's a really cool concept before we run out of any time here. The way that you index this book. So the table of concept idea versus I think in the back you did what did you do? You did you just had a typical sort of glossary or index, but it's actually Dynamo nodes index. So I thought that was pretty neat. And so maybe just explain a little bit, and I'll try and show it up. I know it's not everyone's not going to see it, but it's called the table of concepts versus a table of content. So maybe and the way you highlighted sort of solids and volumes, I think was super helpful. I actually found right in the example we just talked about. It must work, right? Because I found the post from 2 years ago that I did on my blog, and then I searched and I looked through your table of concepts, and I found page 202, and that's how we started the discussion. So it works, but I'd love to hear sort of your theory behind that.
Uh, okay, very good. Yeah. The idea with the book is it's very unconventional, just by all standards. And so I thought, well, early screening of the book from Grasshopper and Dynamo users was that the common question was, where's this?
Hmm.
How do you manipulate the view cube? I want to manipulate the view cube using Dynamo. Where's all my window mullions? I want to do door sills, and I want to do glass. I want to do all this stuff, and I don't see it in the book. And
Right.
so my immediate reaction was, well, it's a book of concepts. I had to kind of pick and choose. I can't obviously show everything that you could ever encounter from a subject. Ceilings, ceilings,
Hmm.
that story, but
Hmm.
you get what I'm saying. Um, and so I thought, okay, I better try to make it as clear as I can that this book is about concepts. So when I basically just renamed the table of contents to table of concepts. I even pondered calling the book of concepts. But then I thought, if I do that, then you may not think it's kind of practical. So anyway,
Hmm.
these are the kind of things that go through my head. But yeah, so the idea there was that it was a table of concepts. But then I thought, well, it's still a little wordy because
Hmm.
if you look at it, so what I had to try to do was I said, okay, let me just try to highlight in red and green
Hmm.
the key words so that as you just kind of scan through it, you'll see it and then you'll get it a little more. And one thing I want to do is I don't ever pressure anyone to get this book. I have in the website, I have these two pages, so you can scroll through them and see if these concepts are something that's of interest to you.
Hmm.
So I just thought I'd throw that in because I'm not saying everybody, by the way. I'm saying you have a chance to kind of review what I have. Okay, so that's the table of concepts. In the
Hmm.
back, I have a node index that's basically every single node. I have a node index for both for Grasshopper and Dynamo, and that's basically every node on in the book. If you're and the idea there was if you were looking to build a beam, so you'd say structural framing, and it would be there.
Hmm.
By curve, it'd give you the page. It'd say 203, go there, and then the equivalent on the Grasshopper side. Um, well, that one's called add beam. So you'd have to look in beam. But what I did too, as I tried to help. So in the Dynamo side, you may be thinking beam. So I say beam, see structural framing. So I tried
Hmm.
to kind of do a more cookbook kind of way of it
Hmm.
to kind of get people to where they want to go, so they can kind of use it as a reference. This took a very very long time
I was
because
just gonna say that sounds
each,
extremely
each
time
page
consuming.
yeah, each page is basically a picture, which is basically a Photoshop file. And so you can't just say auto generate. Uh,
A list of all the nodes in this thing. Yeah.
so I had to embed in metadata in every single image the node in there, and kind of think about how I might rename it to make it a little more sense as I build out the table of contents. Oh, and the table of concepts
Hmm.
with and the as well as the index. Uh,
Yeah,
so
but
it,
but but, it, but it's helpful, right? Because if you didn't have that, and I opened up the ebook version, let's say for example, and I wanted to look at beam examples, right? There's only a couple approaches that you could take. You can't do Control F because if it was an image, unless you had the metadata, right, it wouldn't be searching unless you OCR'd the whole book or whatever, right? So I think it is helpful that you gave us that, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I should mention the ebook does have hyperlinks in them. So
Awesome.
if you do go to the index, you can click on the number, and it'll send you to that page.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Also, maybe I should mention the more on indexing.
Sure.
On the side, this was actually the whole book was built around these tabs on the side. I wouldn't let them go. When I was talking to the publisher, they said get rid of them. They bleed out to the edge. I said no, we have to have them. So anyway, the tabs here on the edge kind of spell out each section, and so that was very important to me to have the tabs on the side. I kind of modeled that over like the way gaming manuals look, as well as some of the steel manuals have the little cutouts in them, so you can stick your thumb in and pull it open. But you can't practically do that. So I thought, well, you got these. But what's really cool is because Dynamo's on one side and Grasshopper's on the other. Actually, if you peel the book this way, it's green, and when you peel it that way, the tabs are red. So that's kind of a nice little.
More Christmas, see?
Yeah, more Christmas.
Awesome, man. So great. So any other final thoughts or anything you wanted to touch on? Not too many questions. There was Emil had a question about how are the lines projected, but I'm not sure. I think we've kind of gone beyond that topic. So Emil, I'll reach out to you separately and we can chat about that. But people are commenting on your lightsabers as usual. Everyone likes your lightsabers. Awesome. And so maybe final words, Marcelo, while you've got the attention of the audience here.
Things that I thought we might want to cover. Let me just
Sure.
make sure I
no problem at all, man.
I hear it. Well, I think we pretty much. I really like how we did the example. That was great. Kind of showed how practical it is. I think we drove home the idea of concepts. We talked about what it took. What's really nice too is there are some universities that have already contacted me who are starting to use this in their classes. So
Awesome.
this originally was supposed to be a training manual. I actually called it the Dynamo Training Manual, and then I reorganized the whole thing to be more in line with kind of a reference manual. But it still has that. It still has that effect because the first section is really on geometry and the basics, understanding Dynamo Grasshopper geometry, and then the middle section is all about its connection with Revit. And so what happens in the geometry section, which also talks about list manipulation and so on, all of those concepts are to prep you for the chapter on Revit, as well as the customization chapter, as well as the interoperability chapter. So if you're a seasoned Grasshopper user, or maybe a seasoned Dynamo user, you may see that there may not be every single thing inside of there, but I included enough so that it could get you to a starting point to interact with Revit. And so example, we go over coordinate systems in Dynamo and coordinate systems in Grasshopper. They're not called coordinate systems, they're called frames. And then that concept comes back around when you start actually building geometry, more complicated geometry in later on in the chapter. So anyway, it's just, if you look at it, clearly not all the functionality is there, but the idea was I had to focus because the book is about connecting with Revit. That's why I made sure to put in the title for Revit.
That's awesome.
So
Fantastic.
But I'm really excited. I'm really glad I finally did it and pulled the trigger. And so it's out now. Hardback's coming out soon. If you're interested, go to the website and check it out. I'm already looking here. The paperbacks are already sold out in the UK and Japan.
Nice.
But there's the ebook is still available in 20 or 30 countries. Hardback's
Fantastic.
coming online soon. You can pre-order that as well.
Awesome. Sweet, man. Thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it. Thanks for writing the book. I think it's going to be helpful. I think anyone, regardless of level of depth of knowledge of either Dynamo, Grasshopper, or both, I think it'll be valuable. As I mentioned, I flip back to your cheat sheets for certain examples, and I immediately thought of that Beam one. So clearly, there's value in having this there. So thank you guys for joining us live. If you're interested, aeccheatsheets.com. You can find out where to get the book. Check out Marcelo on Twitter, as well as at AEC Cheat Sheets and the Simply Complex blog. I'll put any of the links that we talked about in the description here on YouTube. And
Jeff, I'll save this example. I'll save this example as well. So you can have
perfect. Awesome. So yeah, we'll give you guys the example, which is fantastic, and we'll share that with you as well. So thank you guys for joining us again. I appreciate you every week coming to hang out with me and my special guests for the week. Next week, due to the holiday, I will be live on Tuesday at the same time, 12:30. So check out. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well as on the blog. And I haven't fully decided if that'll be the last live stream of the year before January. We'll see. I'm supposed to be on vacation the week after, and we'll see how that pans out. But I do enjoy this so much, so maybe we will be. We'll see. Marcelo, thank you so much again for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone out there does. And yeah, everyone have a great weekend. I'm going to go outside and shovel about 16 inches of snow that just fell last night. I know you know nothing about that in California right now, right, Marcelo? Alrighty, guys. Everyone have a lovely weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.